morning, Judge O'Hare, Commissioners.
Hello, Mayor.
My name is Armin Design. I have the privilege of serving as Mayor Keller. First of all, I just want to express my appreciation and gratitude for the service that you all do for Tarrant County. Tarrant County continues to be a model throughout the entire state, and that's because of leaders like you who continue to put service above self. We put good public policy over personality politics. Yesterday, I emailed this body the reasons as to why Keller took this extraordinary step, which was premised on the fact that TAD is less accountable and transparent today than it was 2 years ago. But for the sake of keeping my comments today to 3 minutes, I'd like to speak as to why we're here and why your action today matters. Under Chapter 6 of the Texas Tax Code, only the taxing entities who apportion their votes to a specific TAD board member on behalf of their constituents can even call for a recall that specific board member. In this case, that means that both Keller and Tarrant County are 2 of the 8 entities who have that right. For the chief appraiser and TAD's attorney, the law overseeing our situation is confusing. For the chief appraiser at that meeting that happened on Friday, there's a quote, "There's no specific wording in the law that says one action supersedes the other. The recall does not supersede the vacancy, and the vacancy does not supersede the recall." Although I agree that the law is confusing and murky, I would respectfully disagree with him that the recall does not supersede the vacancy. Keller called for a recall on February 2021, and on that same resolution, on that same night, casted his votes in favor of recalling the chairperson. In other words, the recall process had already begun on that night. Section 6.033D of the Texas Tax Code states in part, if the vacancy occurs in the Board of Directors after the recall of a member of the board under this section, the taxing units that were entitled to vote in the recall election shall appoint its new members. Commissioners, there's nothing in the code that defines what is a recall. There's nothing in the code that speaks to whether the entities that would have been entitled to vote in that recall election lose their right to do so just because a vacancy occurred after one having been initiated. The fact is, the vacancy would not have happened if it weren't but for the recall election that Keller called for and voted. In Texas, when laws are confusing, contradictory, unclear, public policy is construed liberally in favor of legislative intent, in favor of the people, and all reasonable inferences must be drawn in the people's favor. Or in this case, the entities that represent the people. Bottom line, Keller believes, Honor, if I can just give you 30 seconds. Bottom line, Keller believes that the replacement of a board member that is subject to a recall be limited to those jurisdictions that voted for the board member initially, even though the board member resigned as a result of that effort. Despite all that, per the code, the Commissioner's Court is under a shot clock, and you have a specific window to act under the recall process. And so our constituents are watching. I hope and trust that Tarrant County can be the catalyst for the change that they expect. I appreciate your leadership and look forward to continuing to work with you on this and many other issues that impact our communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Court. My name is Rich Gee. I serve on the Tarrant County Tarrant Appraisal District. And what is happening now is a recall was started, and then a resignation was given in that order. Those require 2 different paths to fill the seat, and that's really what is at stake now. So if there's some consideration that this is moved, the process certainly is not new. The resignation, we had some recalls a few years ago. The chairman, Mike O'Donnell, was recalled, and another board member was recalled after a vote that we took to do a review, which we won 3-2. But with 2 new board members, we revoked that, and it failed 3-2. So what this issue about recall and resignation is not new. Everybody knew this could happen. And what it does is it puts you in a precarious position. Do you have the ability or the authority to do it? And I would contend that you do. process for a resignation is not addressed in the tax code, but the word vacancy is. And what the TAD board did when we met is we declared that there was a vacancy. We did that with, following an executive session in a meeting that Catherine Wildman was running. So the TAD board voted that there was a vacancy when the person who was supposed to be vacant was sitting right there. So I don't know how to address that in law. Lawyers and politicians sometimes create problems like this. I don't know that this has been addressed before. But my belief is, and I'm not a lawyer, but my belief is that the recall, there's no process for stopping the recall. So I think you can definitely vote on it, whatever you decide to do. You can definitely vote on it, and the outcome of that, we'll have to figure that out. So there's two different calendars at play. Somebody suggested, and I think this may have been a good suggestion, you can't vote because there's not an election now, but if you do, say what your desire would be. I think that may have some effect on the way people approach this. As for me, I'm going to be looking at the 8 entities that elected Catherine Wildman, and for me, they're making the decision. What this process that we're in right now is disenfranchising this court and 7 other entities from their vote, and I'm opposed to that. My time's up, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Now we have.
Hello, Judge, Commissioners. I have something I'd love to hand out. Is that possible? Thank you, sir. Well, that's being handed out. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Chandler Crouch. It's my first time here, and it is a privilege to get to speak with you. I appreciate the opportunity. So the question before the court today is regarding the recall of the chairperson at the appraisal district. Believe that the question, well, I shouldn't introduce myself. I represent 28,000 households here in Tarrant County. I protest the property tax values free of charge. Each handout has 2. There's a stapled and then there's a single. And I'll explain what that is. But I represent homeowners here in Tarrant County, 28,000 this past year. I protest their property tax values free of charge with no strings attached. It's an active community service. I serve the same people that you serve all across the county here. My purpose for being here today is because I feel like I am in a position of responsibility, having doing more protests than anybody else, getting to see intimately what happens at the appraisal district. I've been president of almost every appraisal district meeting. I felt right in passing legislation with cooperation of multiple legislators and on and on. The question about whether or not to approve the recall is we've got to look at the idea of this. Ms. Wildman submitted her resignation. She was also, the recall was initiated, and coming up to the appraisal district meeting this past Friday, there was quite a bit of uncertainty as to what path they would need to follow to fill that seat. And Ms. Wildman was aware of this uncertainty, and I believe that we need no other evidence than the fact that we're here today with some ambiguity about what process needs to happen to fill the seat than the fact that her one decision to submit that resignation and to understanding that the political or the legal quagmire that's going to throw all of these local governments into a question of how we're going to fill that seat. That's the only evidence we need about her leadership there and whether or not that should be approved. Now the question is what are we going to do moving forward? I would ask you to approve the recall, but then we've got the question of do you stop there? In your agenda item, it says consider, it's not limited to certain actions. I would suggest that leaves the door open to be able to pass a resolution to consider who's going to fill that seat. You guys, and you guys have an opportunity here to act as leaders in Tarrant County. The only way this doesn't end up in a murky legal debacle here is if you guys take action. That's the only way this is solved. We're dealing with an area of the law that's not really defined there's a hole here. No other state or no other county has touched these laws, because nobody's ever had to utilize them and try and figure out how to navigate. The only way that we're gonna have certainty is if you guys act, you complete the recall, and you go ahead and vote for the replacement, possibly contingent on maybe other actions that could happen. Real quick, this is what you have in your hands. Here are the results from the most recent appraisal district election. Just wanted to submit that so that you could have that for your conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next up we have.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, to this esteemed panel. I just want to say I attended a board meeting at TAG last week, in which I saw that man right there, Mr. Sanchez, be given a written statement by a detractor of Mr. Crouch, and be told to read that written statement. Now, I pointed that out at the hearing, because those written statements were with the same typeface, the same font, and apparently all had similar language to the words that Mr. O'Day wanted against the recall. So I just point that out, that there is a concerted effort by industry and people to misrepresent material facts of this board. In regards to what you said, Mr. Ramirez, about supporting all police, I should hope that as much as you support the right actions of all police officers, that you show equal indignation to groups and gangs of white officers who kill colored people in their own homes, and support the removal from office and immunity, the denial of immunity to officers who brazenly commit these type of acts. Look at my face, ladies and gentlemen. As a 5-time Grammy Award winner, I was accosted by a gang of white police officers who felt that I was too well spoken and didn't know my place, and subjected to false arrest. This is what they do in Fort Worth. I was born in John Peter Smith Hospital. Do you know what it says on my birth certificate from 1971? Negroid. This is how the inappropriate officers act. To the point of Ms. Wildman, she has run amok. Jeff Law is trying to circumvent the authority of this board and implant his own portion. And my mother was the executive assistant to former County Judge Mike Moncrief for 10 years. I'm well aware of the duties and responsibilities of this court. I support this court, but this court should not abrogate itself of its own duties and allow a chief administrator who has his own designs on the city and the county tax resources to implement his own unfettered policy. And you should exercise your right, your jurisdiction, and remain your sovereignty as the protectors of the people of this county. That's all I have to say.